Hello, yes, my name is Amber Harris. I was married to a man named Braxton. Now I'm getting tired of the stories going around on YouTube telling me somebody was adopted. Nobody was adopted. This is the last time I'm going to say this. However, my grandmother, Laretha Cobb, was beat to death. She was beat in a hotel by some men that are non-melanated. Let me say that because I don't want to be racist. This story has to do with them trying to force my ancestors or my family members, my great loved ones, to give up their stuff. Now that the truth has came out, they want to come up with all these illusions and false stories because they don't want to owe money back to my mom and her family members about stolen property, stolen heirs property, and land pat money that they owe. This is a different story. Now let's go to my son's story. My son's story has to do with Children Mercy's Hospital. These people had my son kidnapped on April the 19th, 2023. He was beat and sexually assaulted. And now that I'm trying to get the truth out there, a lady named Valencia Easton has sit up here and done so much crooked stuff on the case with her whole team. So I have two different stories I'm dealing with here. But the first story, nobody was adopted. My mother's uncle had fostered them because they were put into the system by a crooked family member named Mabel Pickett, my mom's first cousin. She was jealous. She wanted my mom's husband. I mean, not my mom's husband, I'm sorry, but my grandma's husband, one of my grandmothers. She got mad. And because they would not give my mom to her great cousin, who was very evil and vindictive, sneaky, stealing, lying woman named Mabel Pickett, she's orchestrated a lot of corruption in this bloodline. Now, my family members' names have different last names. Nobody was adopted for the last time because back in the day, they just didn't go around adopting random black kids because they wanted to. This is a false story. Whoever keeps coming out with this story, there will be sued if they say anybody else was adopted because you're trying to steal money and inheritance that does not belong to you. Please stop speaking on the story from now on until my mom comes out with her story. My mother remembered her childhood very well. My mom remembers seeing my grandmother beat to death in the casket. You cannot tell a child they don't remember their childhood and trying to create a false story because you don't want to do right by the seeds that's left or the lineage that's left to the bloodline that you owe money to. Now, we're not going to make this about money, but what I'm getting upset about is how these corrupted people are coming out of the woodworks with stories that have nothing to do with nothing. They didn't have a problem until now of us going and getting the history straight. Now they're coming out with all these illusions and stories. That stuff is false. I'm going to say this for the last time. Nobody was adopted. I'm not adopted. None of my sisters and brothers are adopted. None of my people are adopted. None of us. But Children Mercies illegally adopted my son to somebody. This is what they're talking about. My son was put in a false legally adoption by Children Mercies Hospital because I did not like their care that they gave my son. I'm the lady that the stories are going around the internet and people are talking about. I don't like how they're making up stories about what's going on with my life and my mom's life. Everybody wants to sit up here and come out the woodworks when we already have our history. We never came forth with and showed any documents because we don't trust people. So while all this is going on around and people are lying and talking about some adoption, that's far from the truth. And if we have to take people to court, we will, because you guys are coming up with a false story. This is the last time I'm going to say this. My mom was fostered by her biological uncle. There is no adoption. My grandmother did not sleep with her brother. All of this nasty, trifling stories that are going around on the internet has to stop. This is not going to work. People keep lying and twisting the narrative. My mom was not adopted, however, but her family's history is great, and people don't like to hear the fact of that. Now back to my son's story about the hospital. The hospital sent police officers to my door and they beat my son or whoever beat him. I'm very upset. Somebody beat my child and sexually assaulted him. And this case is still going on. It's been since April 2023, April the 19th, when they took my 5-year-old little boy from my house without a court order. All this BS because nobody wants to go to jail, all this has to stop. But my mom will get on here and tell her story about her childhood because some people are trying to sit up here and tell her about her childhood when she remembers her history. My uncle remembers their history. So please stop with the adoption because nobody was adopted. My grandmother, however, was beat to death and bludgeoned to death by people. I'm not going to say no names that put out a false story.